Hi, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you today to Komen's December MBC Impact Series event. My name is Casey Volpe, and I'm with Komen's Community Education and Outreach team. So the programming for the series is envisioned as a year-long conversation with attendees where we present new topics and new information every month. And today, I'm very excited because we will be hearing from two individuals living with MBC, Pam Cole and Ashley Fernandez. They're here to share their stories and answer your questions. So before we begin, I have to thank our sponsors for supporting the 2023 Impact Series event. So AstraZeneca, thank you for being our technology sponsor for this year's series. This virtual setting means MBC patients all over can engage and be part of this community. We also need to thank our premier sponsors, GE Healthcare and Merck, and last but not least, our signature sponsors, Walgreens and Daiichi Sankyo. This series is made possible because of their generosity. So we're very grateful we can bring all of this to you every single month. So just a housekeeping note, while everyone is talking, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A feature in Zoom. We'll get through as many as we can. This hour is yours. And Pam and Ashley are excited to talk with you, so don't be shy. So I'm going to get us kicked off. First, I'm going to introduce us to our fabulous moderator, Amy Culver. Amy is a senior specialist in health information and publication at Komen, and she received her Master's of Science in Social Administration and her Master's of Arts in Bioethics from Case Western Reserve University. She's several years of clinical experience in the field of oncology social work. She's worked primarily in outpatient cancer centers providing psychosocial support to patients and their loved ones. In addition to clinical responsibilities, she has volunteered for several organizations, served on various committees, and been involved in psychosocial research. She's a member of the Association of Oncology Social Workers and serves as an editor-in-chief of their quarterly newsletter, AOSW Connections. Her career is a testament to her passion of providing psychosocial care to people living with cancer and their support systems. So Amy, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Casey. I appreciate that warm introduction. I'm honored to be here today alongside our guest speakers and all of you who are here today to listen and participate in today's event. As Casey mentioned, my background is in oncology social work, and I think it's important for people to have an opportunity to share their stories, and if they're comfortable, connect with other people that can understand their lived experience. And so I think that's what I'm hoping all of you are here to do today. And I'm so excited to be moderating this type of event where you'll have the opportunity to hear stories of two amazing people, Pam and Ashley, as they talk about different aspects of their life living with MBC. So I hope you'll hear something in their stories that's helpful to you, and I hope you'll also hear something that's empowering and helps you feel supported both during and after the event. So before we hear from Pam and Ashley, I'd like to go ahead and introduce them to you. Pam Cole was diagnosed with stage 1 ER breast cancer in 2009. In October 2016, she was diagnosed with breast cancer again, and on January 31st, 2017, she was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. A North Carolina native, Ms. Cole has over 40 years of experience working in government and nonprofit management. She served as the executive director of the Susan G. Komen, North Carolina Triangle to the Coast affiliate for 8 years. In that role, Pam was a passionate spokesperson and advocate for equitable breast cancer support services in Eastern North Carolina and the vital need for breast cancer research. She helped raise millions of dollars in support of those efforts. Pam just retired from her role with Komen as the development director of the newly created Metastatic Breast Cancer Collaborative Research Initiative. And next, I'll introduce you to Ashley. Ashley was diagnosed with de novo metastatic breast cancer at the age of 31 in April 2018. Ashley is a fierce thriver who has been living with MBC while being a full-time mom to her daughter and wife to her husband, who is active duty Air Force. Ashley has been involved in Komen's public policy initiatives, was or is a speaker for Komen's MBC Impact Series, and participated in Komen's Moments campaign. She also participated in the Ohio Metzgerade, and does outreach and speaks on behalf of several organizations, including Young Survival Coalition, Light It Up for MBC, and the American Association of Cancer Research. Advocacy gives her a sense of purpose and a community of other women going through the ups and downs of an MBC diagnosis. She's always looking for opportunities to educate and empower others to advocate for the best healthcare possible. So welcome, Ashley and Pam, and I'll go ahead and turn the mic over to Pam.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here today. I know people are busy this time of year, so thank you for joining us today. So as you heard, I have been living with metastatic breast cancer for since 2017. But the interesting part of this story is that I was diagnosed in 2009 with early stage breast cancer, less than a centimeter, ER positive, no lymph node involvement, the perfect case of early detection, right? And I had an Oncotype. An Oncotype is a test that they do to see what your risk for recurrence might be. And my Oncotype number came back as a 6, which is very low, saying I have a very low risk for recurrence. And so we decided to do a lumpectomy and radiation, and at that time, 5 years of endocrine therapy. And I was the poster child, again, for early detection. Went through all of that, finished my 5-year endocrine therapy. At that point, I was working for Komen, and I knew that a study was about to come out saying that for many of us, we need to stay on our endocrine therapy for 10 years. So I asked my oncologist, shouldn't I stay on for 5 more years? And he was like, oh, no, you have such a low risk of recurrence. You're good. You're cured. You can look cancer in your rear view mirror. So, of course, we all celebrated. It was wonderful. I was cured, and we just went forth with continuing our lives as usual. And part of that continuing our life as usual is having an annual mammogram, which I always did in October because it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I went in for my mammogram, and as many of you probably have experienced, they called me back several times for more pictures. And then I was sitting in a room. I didn't even bring my husband or any friends to this mammogram appointment because I was just so sure I was good to go. And so I was sitting in the room by myself for quite a while. And then the radiologist came in and said, we see something, we think it's scar tissue, but we need to do an ultrasound, and we're going to do that right now, which always gives you a little bit of anxiety when they want to do things quickly like that. They did the ultrasound, and the 2 radiologists actually came in and said, we see something, we still think it's just the scar tissue, but just to be sure, we need to do a needle biopsy, which they did 2 days later. And it was just kind of odd. They couldn't quite get the kind of tissue they wanted from there, but they went ahead and did the biopsy. And 2 days later, I got the phone call saying that I had a recurrence of my breast cancer, and that it was, they were pretty sure it was ER positive, but because the tissue wasn't quite clean, they weren't sure. And because I'd had radiation, they recommended a mastectomy in that breast. And I say all the time, the good news is I work at Komen at that point, and I knew a lot. And the bad news is I work at Komen and I know a lot. So I kept saying, are we sure? Are we comfortable with just the mastectomy? And they were saying yes, especially until we get the tissue. So I had the mastectomy, and the tissue, the pathology came back a little, there were some questions that they had, but my oncologist called and was just so happy and convinced that this was, quote, just a recurrence, and that they were just going to put me back on endocrine therapy. And I don't feel completely comfortable with this. I don't need chemo, or we don't want to do a PET scan. And oh, no, you don't need a PET scan. And a couple weeks, and so that I went right on to my endocrine therapy like the next day. And a couple days later, maybe a week later, the radiation oncologist called and said that she was trying to decide whether I needed radiation again, and that she was 95% certain that I didn't need radiation, but she was going to take it to the tumor board just to make sure. And at that point, I said, well, if we're going to the tumor board, then I want a PET scan. And she said, you don't need a PET scan. It's just a recurrence. I said, but I know enough to know that I think I need one, number one. And number two, I don't think that there's anything wrong, but don't we want, it would be great to at least have a baseline if I'm back here again in 5 years. And she tried to talk me out of it. I said, no, if we're going to the tumor board, let's get all the information. She said she would try to get my insurance to pay for it. And she called back and insurance agreed. So I went in for the PET scan. And the next day, the radiation oncologist called and said, this is why we don't like to do PET scans, because they're oversensitive. And yes, 2 areas lit up, and now we're going to have to poke and prod you. And I really don't think it's anything. And this is a perfect example of why we don't like to do these PET scans. So I went in for the biopsy, and it was 2 lymph nodes near my lungs. So because of where it was, they needed to put me to sleep. It was outpatient that afternoon. And my husband and I are sitting in the outpatient waiting to leave. And I see my oncologist and I see my radiation oncologist at 6:30 at night walking toward me in the room. And I looked at my husband and said, this is not going to be a good conversation. And they came in and said that I have stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, and that they were shocked. They can't believe it. This is so unlikely. But that I have ER positive stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. And they said the average survival rate is 2.5 to 3 years. And January 31st, I will be 7 years, and went immediately on CDK inhibitor along with my endocrine therapy, and have had ups and downs and progression, and I've had radiation at least 3 times, 2 cryoablation, switch to CDK inhibitor, and we can talk and answer your questions about side effects and other things as well. And I, obviously do have some thoughts about things I've learned that I'll be glad to share.
Thank you so much, Pam, for sharing your story. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Ashley.
Hi, everyone. Sorry. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Fernandez. I'm really happy to be here with you guys all. I've been living with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer since April of 2018. I got diagnosed at the age of 31, and unfortunately, I kept getting told that I was too young. I had just turned 31 years old, and I was complaining of body pain since February of 2017. I fell down. We were living in Alaska. I fell down and I just couldn't recover from the fall. My ribs and my hip and everything just kept hurting on my right side. That led me to the specialist, and they couldn't find anything. Fast forward to February of 2018, I felt a lump and I got dismissed like so many other young ladies and gentlemen, getting told, hey, we're too young. Someone even tried to say that it was a cyst from breastfeeding, but my daughter had just turned 3, so there was no way, because I personally didn't breastfeed that long. So I really had to advocate. And for the longest time, I was made to feel as though something was wrong with me, or I was hallucinating this imaginary lump, or that something was wrong and my concerns just weren't being valid. So I finally worked up enough courage to talk to patient advocacy and figure out how I can go about at least getting an ultrasound or seeing what was going on, because I was getting dismissed left and right at the military treatment facilities where we lived in Alaska. So moving forward, like fast forward, I finally got taken seriously in March, and it was just by a moment of grace. I met somebody at the Joann's line that was wearing a pink Komen little ribbon, and we talked, and it turned out that she worked for an ultrasound place at the breast center in Alaska. She told me exactly what to say to push for treatment options and to get seen. So I did exactly as she said when I called Monday morning. That was a Sunday, and I had an appointment that Wednesday. When I finally went to the appointment, I once again was told, hey, it's probably nothing. You don't have a family history. You don't have any of the markers. So you're probably fine. So we're just doing this and kind of like wasting resources just to give you peace of mind. Well, we did an ultrasound and it showed out that I needed the mammogram. I did a mammogram and it came out inclusive. So they said I needed a breast MRI. And all this was done in like a span of 3 days. I ended up getting a breast MRI and I lit up. Not only did my right breast show that I had numerous cancer, but it just showed that it was like highly, highly aggressive. So that got me into an oncologist office really, really quickly. When I went to the oncologist office, they asked if I had pain anywhere else, and I expressed that I had pain on my right side, that we thought it was from roller derby or, the fall, and it hasn't been able to be plain. That got me a bone scan. When I got the bone scan, it turned out that I lit up like a Christmas tree. So that meant that I had breast cancer all throughout my bones. For a lot of people, that's really scary, because if you're like me in the beginning, I didn't know absolutely anything about breast cancer. I'm going to be honest, besides pink, I didn't really know. I educated myself really quickly and found out that you can't just get a bone marrow transplant and try to take care of this bone cancer, because it is breast cancer in the bones. So the treatment options were differently. I'm happy to report that I've been very, very blessed. And on this roller coaster ride of MBC, I've been on many treatments. I've had amazing care, but I've also had to speak up on multiple accounts. Not only am I a woman of color, I'm Hispanic, and I get kind of dismissed about pain a lot. I don't know if any of you ever feel that way, but I have to advocate at a higher rate for myself. So I always like to say that if something's wrong or something in your care doesn't work for what you feel that you need, you're worthy of it. So make sure you advocate for it. So yeah, I've been living with MBC since 2018. So I'm about to hit 6 years in April. On that roller coaster ride, I've had a lot of highs and a lot of lows. And I would just like encourage you all to ask us questions, because we're here for you. But I also want you to remember that it's okay to be happy and present, but also be sad or anything else. Those big emotions can coexist. And I am going through those right now because I'm in a season of progression. So please ask Pam and I everything and anything, because we're here for you.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for sharing your story and also for that encouragement. And I agree, this is an event for people living with MBC. And so thank you guys for both sharing your story and your willingness to answer the questions that that come in, and we can hop right into those. So one of the things that I'm hearing as I'm listening to both of your stories, and something that stood out to me, is really the piece about advocacy. Pam, you talked about how you really had to advocate to get that scan and where that led you. And Ashley, you've talked about, several examples where you really had to advocate for yourself. So could you tell me and tell all of us, what that really looks like as far as advocating for yourself, and how do you do that while also trying to manage and maintain relationships with your healthcare team?
I'll go first, because Ashley, I think it's even harder when you're de novo. It makes it even harder in some ways. I think that it's a really hard thing to do. And, I'm a fierce advocate and have been a fierce advocate my whole career in the not-for-profit sector. I was working at Komen. I knew a lot of people. I knew a lot of things, and it was still hard for me to find the courage to advocate. And part of the reason is, as Ashley mentioned, it ends up making us feel like we're nuts, right? And that we're hypochondriacs, or that somehow we want to be sick. And I had dinner with a close friend the night before my PET scan, and he said something to me like, well, Pam, it sounds like you want them to find something. You keep asking for these tests. I mean, it was like the worst thing anybody could have said to some of us who are struggling and questioning ourselves. But I think the most important thing is to trust your gut, and to always remember that this is your life, and you know what feels right, and you know what feels off. And don't ever, ever, ever let them dismiss you. And, one of the things we say all the time is, if you feel something, say something. And if you've been diagnosed with breast cancer before, if you have a pain or something feels off for 2 weeks that you can't explain, you need to see a doctor. And I think the other piece of advocacy, and we can talk more about this if you like, is that you've got to find the doctor that you're comfortable with, the doctor that wants to be as aggressive as you want to be. And if you don't want to be aggressive with your treatment, find a doctor who's in the same space as you are. Because every time you go to the doctor, if you don't have that simpatico approach to treatment, it's going to really be a problem every time you go, because you're going to leave feeling like there's something wrong with you.
I second everything Pam said. I also think it's really important to realize that we have a voice and we know ourselves better than anybody else. So it's important to take an intake of yourself and really ask yourself, how are you feeling? What do I need from this? Like, really, it sounds silly, but like, really just ask yourself, what am I feeling? So this morning, I am feeling overwhelmed. I am feeling overwhelmed with emotion because, as so many of us, I am facing progression. I've decided to take not necessarily a break, but just kind of not worry about it until after Christmas, because I have a little girl that just turned 9. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I want to focus on the holiday and be present there. But even though you're present, it's okay to continue to look for different options. So when we go to the doctor, we can have questions on hand, or like, hey, this is what I've looked up to. This is what I'm seeing online. This is what I see the progression is. I'm having progression in my bones and on my groin. So therefore I can look, okay, this is my subtype. This is what other people in my community are doing. Do any of these treatments qualify for me? It's important to speak up for yourself, because then nobody else will fight for you as well as you can. Like, yes, we have husbands and caregivers and families and friends, but we know ourselves best, and we know what we want out of this life. So my advice to all of us is figure out how you're feeling exactly. Try to place an emotion on that, but also, what would you like your life to look like? Like for me, I want to be here and present for my daughter, right? So in order to do that, what treatment options can I go to that possibly will give me decent quality of life still, but still hit the cancer? Because for me, like, I want to be aggressive, but I have a little girl that I want to be present with. So it's completely different on where you're at. But I also think it's important to, Pam's going to talk about this probably, get second opinions. Like you said, how to advocate for yourself. It's important to, if you don't feel right with that doctor, our doctors work for us. And a lot of people don't like to question doctors, but I'm the complete opposite. I'm first generation American. So it's completely different. I woke up realizing, like, in this country, we have a say. In this country, we are allowed to question and ask. You don't just have to nod and take it. So I feel very empowered with that knowledge. And I will ask my doctor anything and everything. And if I don't like the response, I just make sure to say, okay, thank you. I'm going to continue to look at that, and I will message you or something else at a later date. What about you, Pam?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole notion of second opinion and focusing on, I mean, you and I, Ashley, have talked about this whole concept of and instead of but. So I enjoy my life. I am very intentional about creating memories and thinking about what's happening in the future. And I also have a lot of angst every 3 months with my scans. And I also have come to terms with the fact that I'm never going to really feel great again. That these treatments are not easy. Some are harsher than others, but all of them, I don't know of any that don't cause fatigue, that don't cause achiness, that don't cause other kinds of issues, whether it's diarrhea or skin sores or whatever it is. And, you know I can say to myself, oh, well, I'm 71 years old. Of course, I'm tired. Of course, I don't feel great. But that's just, not acknowledging the fact that I'm living with stage 4 and I'm always going to be in treatment. And I think your point is so well said about understand where you are. And if you're at a place in your life where your quality of life is a higher priority in some ways than being in bed for months with treatment, you get to decide that. Nobody else gets to decide that. None of your MBC friends, none of your family. You've got to decide that with your physician about whether you want to take a holiday or not, and how fierce of a treatment or how harsh of a treatment you want to go through. And that can change. Just because you make that decision today doesn't mean you have to live with that decision forever. And I just think that whole notion of, being so intentional about how you're living your life is so important. When I was first diagnosed with MBC, I reached out to a friend who had been living with ovarian cancer in remission. Then it came back in remission. I mean, she'd just been living. I asked her to go to lunch with me. I said, tell me how you live with this. And she gave me 2 pearls of wisdom. And the first was, be intentional about creating memories, which I am very much involved in. And secondly, she said, I always buy travel insurance. And for me, I don't travel that much, but for me, it was such a metaphor for live your life and know that your life may change any given day. You may not be able to go on that trip. You may not, and that you need to be able to plan the trip or plan your next step in your relationships, but always in the back of my mind is knowing, well, I'm going to go ahead and proceed with this, but I also know that I may need that travel insurance.
I love that. I travel all the time, and I didn't purchase travel insurance one time. So I really ended up getting booted on that one, but that's okay because I still bought the ticket.
Right.
But good advice.
Yeah, I think you guys shared so much good, valuable, practical advice within the different things that you guys are talking about. So thank you so much for that. We had a question come in, and you guys have started to touch on this, and I'm just wondering if you have anything else that you'd like to say. But we have someone here today who found out today that they have progression to a new area. And so is there anything else that you would like to share that you think would be comfortable as far as, how to handle that emotionally or with your mindset, in addition to what you've already shared?
I'll go first. First of all, I'm sorry you're going through that. A lot of us are there with you. So it sucks, and it's okay for it to suck. So number 1, I would allow yourself to feel whatever it is you're feeling. But then remember, there's lots of different options. There's clinical trials, and this isn't the end. There's always something out there. And as long as you want to continue to look for it, talk to your medical team and research.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that too. I know it's so scary. And especially if that means that you're going to have to change your treatment. And it's always scary when you realize, uh-oh, you know, I'm on my second line. I'm going to go on my third. How many are there? That's why research is so important. But, you know, the best advice is to do whatever you can to get the best research. You know, go to the Komen website, go to the medical center websites, talk to other people who you know who might be going through progression or might be having to going on the, or who are on the treatment you might need to go on. And I so strongly believe in second opinions. You know, I don't get a second opinion for every one of my progressions, but, you know, if it's a big change, it may be worth your while to, if you're not at a cancer center, to just go get that second opinion. In many instances, whatever the treatment might be, they can do it in your local environment. And I know in my institution, which is a big, well-known institution, not all the doctors treat the same way within the institution. So there are different philosophies about how aggressive to be on a new tumor, and what kinds of treatments. So, you know, yes, I understand being sad and I understand being afraid, and that sometimes it feels so overwhelming. But if you can muster up the energy to try to do some research so that you yourself can have some confidence about what the next steps might be. And do not be afraid to ask your doctor to refer you for that second opinion. And many of these research centers now are doing it on video. So it's not like you're going to have to travel. You may want to, and you may have to, but you can also have your records sent and your scans sent and have a video second opinion. And you never know. There may be a clinical trial at that institution, or, you know, my institution is doing a lot of work with cryoablation, but the institution 30 minutes away is not. So, you know, you just got to see what's out there and then make some choices.
And I would like everybody to know that, like, I've been in this for almost 6 years, and me and Pam just had this conversation, 2 weeks ago? And because of her, I just scheduled a second opinion. And it wasn't because I was scared or anything else. I just didn't even think in the sense of like, oh my goodness, all this is happening. It's the holidays. It's this. I didn't feel like I could muster up that strength. And it was so nice to just hear somebody else pour into me and say, hey, there's other options and you deserve that second opinion. So for anybody out there, like Pam said, I would like you guys to hear it from us. You deserve that second opinion. There's nothing wrong. It's not insulting your doctor. It's just saying, hey, I would like to know what else is available to me. So thank you, Pam, again for that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you guys are both really touching on that piece about how information can be so empowering, and how there's a lot of different channels to get information, you know, whether it be through Komen or people that you know, always, you know, of course, driving home, talking with your medical team about it, you know, or if you do get a second opinion, you may learn some new information or get information reinforced that you've already heard. And so, you know, there's a lot of benefits, I think, in just what you're talking about alone. So thank you again for sharing that. We can talk a little bit more about, there's a couple questions related to side effects. So an opportunity to share more information with people. One person, Pam, I think this question's specifically for you, but they're wondering if your side effects factored at all into your decision to retire. And then they're also asking if you have any tips, both of you, for how to battle fatigue.
Yes. My fatigue and my side effects definitely had somewhat of impact on my decision to retire, but I was of age. And I mean, I was 68, I guess, when I decided to finally retire. And part of that was also having started working from home during COVID, having switched my role as executive director to create this new collaborative metastatic breast cancer initiative to raise funds to fund collaborative research grants between Duke and UNC, who, were doing great work independently, but not necessarily together, and wanted to incentivize them to work together, and was working really hard, pretty much on my own, to raise $2 million. And I was saying at one point, I've done good enough. I've raised 2 million. We're funding 5 grants. My palliative therapist at my institution, when I was trying to make the decision about retiring, and I was saying, I've done good enough my career. She said, I'd really like for you to rethink that and say that you've done enough good. And it was such a powerful moment for me to realize, yeah, and I can now focus on taking care of me and being intentional about the memories, and also being intentional about the legacy that I want. And it's a career legacy, of course, but also, what is it that I want my friends and family to remember? What's that core piece about me and our friendship and our family that's important? And it's not, I wanted to be intentional about that. So, and I don't think there is anything more important when living with metastatic breast cancer than to rest and to learn how to pace oneself. And a lot of us, that I meet and talk to, we're type A, we're, whether it's focusing on our family and cooking, making breakfast every morning and going, we want it all, we're doing. So rest was never something that when I got sick felt comfortable. It felt like I was giving in, that I was giving up, and that rest was, and my doctor kept saying, Pam, you have stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. Rest is a treatment, and you need to start thinking about rest as a treatment, not as something that you're doing because you can't cope, or that you're being lazy, or that you need to be productive. Rest is as important as the pills that you're taking, and the rest is helping your pills do their work. It took me a long time to understand that. And once I retired, man, do I understand that. And I thought I would be miserable, but it's been great. So the way to rest is to learn how to pace yourself. If I'm doing Hanukkah dinners, for family and friends, and making latkes and doing all of that, I have decided I'm not doing that 2 nights in a row. I got to give myself and the house, so that it doesn't smell like latkes for a month, a break. And it's okay. It's okay to sit on the porch. It's okay to work a jigsaw puzzle. It's okay to just, instead of going out to lunch with your friend, to have a Zoom call, or just have a phone schmooze, and learning that is so important. And you're sort of, with the CDK inhibitors and with the diarrhea, sometimes you're sort of forced to stay at home. And, in some ways that also taught me that I got to listen to my body, and staying at home and resting can help so many of those, especially the fatigue. And the final thing I'll say about the fatigue is I've been dealing with this fatigue, for several years, and haven't complained about it too much because, I have stage 4, and our family was going to Italy for 3 weeks, and I got really fatigued and really sick, and finally asked somebody else who had been struggling with fatigue, said, why don't you get some Ritalin or Adderall or something? And so 7 years, I finally asked for it. I'm not using it very often, but it's just like asking for help. And hopefully the institution that you're in has good palliative care, which we can talk about later. But Ashley, you go and talk.
So I retired at 34. Unfortunately, COVID kind of made my whole world shut down. I worked with children, and therefore it just wasn't safe during COVID. I worked at a child development center, and I worked at the front desk, and there was just a lot of germs. We didn't know what it was. So my oncologist asked me to take a step back. I worked for the government. So I retired. I put in my paperwork. Oops, I'm so sorry. That's my dog. Sorry, guys. I put Rocky. Sorry. Okay. I put in my paperwork, and I was retired by May 4th when COVID happened. Like, it was so quick. I took a leave of absence. So I was on leave for about 12 weeks, and then my retirement paperwork came in. So I retired at 34, and that was really hard for me because before that, like Pam was saying, I've always been like just a go-getter. And COVID, I know it shut the world down and it impacted people in a lot of different ways, but it made me really realize, like, what am I going to do? I'm so used to like going. And when I wasn't going, I was advocating at rallies or just being involved in different activities that I didn't just have any pauses. So it really just made me stop and take intake of what was really important. And I feel like that really changed my perception. That's also the time that I realized that my fatigue was awful, and I started palliative care. Starting palliative care changed my life because my daughter was 4 at that time, 3, 4, 5, kindergarten at that time. So I had her at home full time. My husband's active duty in the military. So I started Ritalin, and I'm still on it. And it's really just allows me to keep up with her. What I like about it is that you only use it as you need to. So if there's days like today where I'm not feeling 100%, but I also don't have anything planned except for this call, I can literally not take it and be fine. But if I was going hiking with my Girl Scout troop or something, I can make sure to have that just so I'm a little bit more vigilant and have the energy to do what I need to do. Palliative care, a lot of people are scared of because it's in the hospice center most of the time. But I'd like to just say that it's life-changing, and that they treat the symptoms and the person. So it's not end of life care. It's just to make sure that your life just day to day gets better.
Yeah, I can't say enough about how important it is to start with palliative care as soon as you can, so that you're getting the help that you need to manage the symptoms. And I mean, I think one of the issues with being in treatment all the time is, ooh, I have this pain. Is this cancer? Is this my drug? Or is it just that I slept funny? And it can be so heavy on our hearts and our head all the time. Oh my gosh, is this progression? Is this progression? Or is this a side effect? And palliative care, this is what they do all day. And so they really help figure some of that out and help manage it.
Yeah. And if you don't have palliative care with you, maybe pain management would be a good resource too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys both so much for sharing your experience with palliative care. I was hoping that was something that we could touch on today, because I do think from my time in the clinic, there is a lot of fear and different emotions that come with that. And so I appreciate you both touching on the different benefits that you've received from palliative care. And of course, talking about that with your doctor, seeing what's available to you. I agree, if there's something maybe not right at your center, maybe there's something else within your area, or a team of people that you can work with. So thank you guys again for touching on that. I'm wondering if we could also just talk a little bit about the other people in your life, right? The relationships, because that's very much a part of day-to-day life. And I know you guys have both talked about the different relationships that are important to you and the intentionality that you put into your relationships. And so someone's asking, how do you communicate to your friends and family that you need ongoing support beyond your diagnosis? Life kind of goes on, and sometimes people forget to check in, but maybe in a spot where you still very much need support. And so how do you handle those types of conversations with family and friends?
Well, I think that it's a challenge because we both look good, right? We don't look sick. We have our hair at the moment, and we don't walk around. We don't stay in bed all day, every day. And you just sort of feel like, I sometimes feel like my friend, I'm bored with myself. And so I can't even, I'm sure my friends are bored with hearing about what's happening with my scans and everything else. And one of the things I've certainly learned is to try to stay away from or confront people with that toxic positivity. It's just, there is nothing, it's so hard to deal with when people say, oh, you're going to beat this. Well, no, I'm going to be in treatment, and treatment is hard. And well, anybody could get hit by a bus tomorrow, all of those things. It's
that
different.
metaphor is so wrong. Sorry.
Yeah, that one just drives me crazy. And you just got to be honest. And I guess the most important thing for me is to find my person that I can talk about my thoughts and my travel insurance issues, about, thinking about what music I want at my funeral, or those kinds of things. Like, there are topics that I cannot talk to my husband and family about. It's just too hard for them, but it's who I am in terms of living with both. And so I have some friends that I can do that with, and it makes all the difference to be able to talk about some of the hard stuff. And it's, I think the thing I struggle with the most still is when I'm at an event or at a party, and somebody comes up and says, how are you doing? And it's like, I so much want to live in the real world. And I also want the real world to be teachable moments. And maybe that's because my role at Komen for 8 years. I'm just not willing to say, I'm okay. But I also know it's not the right place to just give them all my gory details. I haven't quite found the right answer. So sometimes I say, today I'm doing pretty well. Or, it comes and goes. Thanks for asking, but that's all. It's dealing with friends and family is hard.
For me, I think it's a little bit different. So I'm younger. So people my age are doing different things, right? Especially when I was first diagnosed in the beginning, I feel like you have all of this support, like all these waves of support, and everybody's like, hey, we got this. And it's like a big pep rally, and you feel like, oh, this is going to be great. But then when you're first diagnosed, I was told 18 to 36 months. I've outlived that. So sometimes people don't understand that it's ongoing still. Like, they're like, oh, you have chemo again? And it's like, yeah, every 21 days or 14 days or whatever your treatment plan is. And they just can't grasp that concept a lot. So for me, I just make sure, like, in general, I'm a pretty upbeat person, but I'm also very honest and upfront. So how are you doing today? Right now, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. Tomorrow, it might be a different story. So maybe you should ask me then. Very, very different. But it's also not to be insensitive, because I feel like people mean well when they say, oh my gosh, you look so good today. Right. And if I'm going out, I do like to look good. Like, I like to look good because sometimes it makes me feel better than what I really feel on the inside. Because on the outside, we all look amazing. You guys at home probably look amazing too. But I struggle. I struggle on my day to day. And what keeps me going is to continue to try to keep myself, I wouldn't say normal. And I hate when people say this, but it's like the best way to describe it. Your new normal. It's a horrible term for like a new normal, but like my life with cancer is completely different. I know I have it and I live with it every single day, but it doesn't take over every single day. And I think that's gotten easier as the longer I've lived with it, and the longer that I've had to accept, like, hey, this is like one terrible, like, quarter of my book and my whole life story. It's like terrible if you like 4 chapters, but I allow those chapters to spread everywhere else. I just don't allow it to take over my whole book. And I know for everybody, it's completely different, but it's what works for me. It's not that I just keep it in a box on the shelf. Like, no, I know every single day what I'm living with, and I know, but I just don't allow it to take over every single day. And that's how I internalize and work with it. I also have a really good family support. My mom will drop everything to come be with me. And I'm really, really thankful for that. Lately, I've had to take a step back from a lot of my advocacy work and everything else, just because we don't have a support system here in North Carolina. I've been here for about a year, so it's been a very lonely journey. And I'm really thankful for the friends in the community that I've built on the NBC Facebook pages or just the community at different events that I've attended, because that's really helped me feel not so alone. And like Pam was saying, it's important to find and meet people that just understand what you get with no judgment. Like you could say like the gnarly things, like a horrible joke, like, oh, I get it because it's in my bones, or some, I don't know, like it's so funny, my bones are laughing. I don't know, something stupid. Like people just get those horrible jokes and they understand exactly what you mean when you're like, hey, I feel like this, and that's okay. Like you don't have to explain it and you don't have to put on a show. Sometimes I can't only be so honest with my mom and my husband's incredible. But then if I tell them exactly what I'm feeling, it ends up being like more worrisome for them and then more stressful for me, because then they're micromanaging me or just like over hovering. And for me personally, I don't like that. I'm pretty independent and I like to just fly. There have been times in my life where I was paralyzed with this disease, like the cancer ate a bone and it just caused all my nerves to go. So I couldn't walk for about 4 months. And I really needed to rely and learn to ask for help. So that really humbled me. So I feel like I'm better for that. But yeah, I think it's important to be honest, but like Pam said, meet people that get you. And there's a lot of communities out there. And if you're open, I think that's something I'd like to touch on too, because a lot of people are scared to meet other people in the MBC community because of deaths and because we lose our friends and there's grief and there's a lot associated with it. But I would never tell you guys not to meet somebody else just because there's a possibility that we can lose them. I've lost many friends throughout this lifetime to survive plenty of lifetimes, but I would never give up that friendship to not have with them. How do you feel about that, Pam?
I totally agree. And it's hard because it's scary too, as people go through new treatment and you think, oh gosh, I'm going to have to do that. And, sometimes, I had this vision about how this was going to go, right? And that I was going to be on treatment, that treatment would fail. I'd go on another, that one would fail. I'd go on another, that one would fail. And at some point, there was going to be a decision about quality of life, remaining life versus treatment. And that I'd make the decision to go off treatment and I'd, go into hospice and friends and family would come and comfort me. I had this whole vision about how this goes. And one of my MBC friends and colleagues, she's been living longer than I have, but she had this crazy reaction to the treatment that she had been on for 2 years. And I mean, crazy reaction suddenly. Ambulance, she thought she was going to die in the ambulance. And, it was horrible. And as she was telling me this story, I could feel my heart pacing. Wait a minute. That's not what I thought was going to happen. I thought it was going to be this nice, quote, progression. But our treatments are toxic. And we could get sick and die, not necessarily from our cancer, but from the fact that our liver can no longer take the treatments or whatever. And coming to terms with that, was hard and is still hard when I watch other people suffering and going through whatever it is they're going through. Wait, it isn't necessarily linear, right? It isn't going to necessarily go through a straight line. But like you said, I wouldn't give up the relationships and the valuable knowledge and hearts that I embrace with MBC for anything.
Yeah, same. So look for support groups in your area. If you don't have any around you, plug in online. There's different Facebook pages. There's different, what was I trying to say? Sorry, I lost my train of thought, guys. I'm sure you guys understand. There's different Facebook groups. There's different communities, like Komen has some things probably. I know YSC has some for people under the age of 40. Living Beyond Breast Cancer has some. Like there's a lot of things out there that can fit your needs. Share has some. There's tons of different organizations out there, and you can find one that'll match you. And you might not vibe with everybody in that crowd, and that's okay, because the more you're in this, you can figure it out and find somebody that you click with. And you're
So
welcome to
say, I know it's almost time to go. I'll just say one thing that also has helped me. And, you know, again, some people are going to say, gosh, I can't believe it's so gory. But, you know, we went on this trip to Italy, and my niece was looking for a leather coat in Florence, you know, and so I went in with her. And to make a long story short, I ended up walking out with a leather coat myself, which was not on my list of things to buy. But as I was trying it on and thinking about it, and everybody was saying, oh, it's so great, it's so great, my immediate thought was, I can't buy a leather coat. I have stage 4 cancer. That's a ridiculous thing to do. And then I sat with that for like a minute or two. And then I said, somebody's going to really want this. And I'm going to decide who's going to inherit it. And so I may not enjoy it for 20 years, but somebody will. And I'm giving my daughter my engagement ring now, and we're going to go and design something beautiful for her now instead of willing it to her. I think there are things that we can do once we understand our situation and sort of learn to live with it that can be comforting. And it may be hard for our friends to understand that we're so open about this piece, but it really can help create the memory and the legacy that you want for yourself and your family.
I love that you said that, because as Pam, I have a 9-year-old, as I mentioned a few times, and it's really important for me to build into her and pour into what I really want to do. And when you speak of legacy, it scares a lot of people because you're talking about the end, right? And everybody's not open for that topic. But it's important for us to leave what we want our kids or our husbands, our family members to know. Like, don't leave it unknown. That's one thing I've learned through this. I sat with a friend that passed away, and she didn't have letters. She didn't have videos. And then at the end, she wanted us to help her. And that was beautiful. But while we're good and while we're here and while we're present, I recommend taking a second. As hard as it is, I cried writing my first letter to my little girl. As hard as it is, I recommend writing them, because nobody's going to say your words better than you. And even just an I love you and your signature might mean the difference for your family members, for your friends, for whoever's important in your life. So, like Pam said, it's important to leave what you'd like to say.
And do it now.
While you're good.
Whether it's take that trip with your husband that you always wanted to, or take that trip to, I mean, it doesn't have to be a heavy letter all the time, right? Yes. And sometimes it's just experience the joy that you can find now with your loved ones. So those are the memories that they have.
Yeah. For us, it was baking cookies and writing down the recipe together, and making my daughter write a contract yesterday because she wanted to quit something. And I was like, okay, stick to your word. Like, we both signed it. Like, just little things. It doesn't have to be anything massive, like Pam said, but little things count. And you count. So we're glad you're here.
Thank you both so much. We're getting so close on time. I feel like I could stay on here and talk to you both all day because you have so much advice and wisdom and experience and all of those things to share. And so I feel really grateful that we even got an hour with you to be able to hear what you have to say. And thank you for sharing your voice. And thank you for being just so vulnerable and open and honest to talk about all the different aspects to living with MBC, the good, the bad, the, you know, things that you guys have done that have found helpful. Thank you so much. We got some comments in the chat about how helpful this was and how much people really appreciated it. So thank you. And I also want to thank you for all the work that you've done for Komen. It's very much appreciated. Thank you. We wouldn't be able to do all of this without you. So thank you. And I will pass it back to Casey.
Me again. So I'm nowhere near as amazing as Ashley and Pam. And I think we all agree that this was a fabulous hour. It was helpful. It was impactful. And certainly validating for a lot of your experiences. And that's why we're here. But the lesson I took away is that an hour was nowhere near long enough. So I have a couple of requests for all of you that are still hanging on with us, because if you're still here, I'm thinking you probably agree. In the chat, there's a survey link. This event today was a little bit different than we typically do for the Impact series. We always focus on clinicians and researchers and those types of expertise to come and educate and provide that information and answer your questions directly. And today we heard from patients. I got the patient perspective, and I think that's so important. And it seems like that was really well received. So if that was the case, I need you to click on that link and tell me about it. Tell me what else you want to hear about, what other conversations you want to have, and we will work it into the program to the best of our ability. So again, thank you to Ashley and Pam for being the rock stars you are. Amy, you were a fabulous moderator. We got through just about every comment and question, I think, which is a miracle in and of itself because there were plenty. So thank you guys. Today's session was recorded and it's going to be posted to our landing page soon. I will also send it out to everyone who registered today. So if you enjoyed this and you found it useful, or you think your family or friends will find it useful, share it. Maybe it'll help facilitate some of those tough conversations, or just give somebody some perspective that you're struggling to deliver, and gain some of that understanding to what you're experiencing. That's the hope anyway. So once again, I just have to quickly thank our sponsors, because without them, we wouldn't be able to have these fabulous conversations. So thank you to AstraZeneca, thank you to GE Healthcare and Merck, and thank you to Daiichi Sankyo and Walgreens. It's a little bit of a tongue twister, I apologize. So again, please fill out the survey. Our next event is January and will be a research focus on ER-positive metastatic breast cancer. Date to be determined, because we're still confirming our fabulous expert. So I will send that out as soon as we have it. I hope you will join us for that conversation as well. And I thank you all for your feedback, your stories, your voices, and your participation. It truly means the world to me. And it's a privilege to do this job and to be able to meet and speak with all of you. So I hope everyone has a fabulous holiday season. And I look forward to connecting again next year.
Bye.
Bye.